Part 69. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 681. Chapter 681. Don't let anyone take advantage of the loophole. The village chief uncle has a habit of getting up every morning and walking around the village first to make sure the village is safe last night before going home for breakfast. He is like a toothless tiger. Although he is old, he still firmly protects his territory. The villagers who were in charge of patrolling last night were walking home, breathing white air, and greeted the village chief when they saw him. The village chief asked, "Was it quiet last night? Did you make 2 more trips to the pig house? At this time, the big beasts on the mountain are hungry. Be careful, they are thinking about our New Year pig." "Don't worry, village chief. We'll go there for a walk in half an hour. We also went to look nearby at dawn. There aren't even any paw prints of wild beasts," a villager responded. The village chief nodded, and when he saw that his nose was red from the cold, he smiled and cursed, "Didn't I ask you all to wear masks? You know how to throw them away all day long. Be careful if your nose falls off due to the cold. If your wife doesn't care about you, just be a bachelor." Everyone burst out laughing, causing the villager to pat the snowflakes on his hat and say, "I was so anxious to come out last night that I really forgot about it. However, this sheepskin jacket from our village is very warm. It protects my neck when I put on the hat. I don't feel cold at all." Of course, the village chief raised his chin proudly. It only takes 2 sheepskins to make a big coat, and a layer of cotton is added, and 1 piece costs a full 2 taels of silver. Our village has a hot spring valley. We make money every day, and we sell jade melons and fruits, otherwise we would be reluctant to buy them. It's really easy for you guys. Keep patrolling from now on. The Chinese New Year is coming soon. Be careful if someone is jealous of our good life and comes to cause trouble." The villagers responded one after another, and someone asked with a smile, "Village chief, when will we distribute the dividends? It's time to buy New Year's goods in a few days, and the ladies at home are so excited. I added salt to the stew twice yesterday, and it almost killed me." Hearing these words, everyone held their breath and stared, obviously very concerned. The village chief raised his hand and slapped the man who asked the question, and laughed and scolded, "Don't use the old ladies at home as a cover. You are just worried. You are really worried in vain. The village can still lose you. Just wait patiently. My uncle has been a little busy recently, so I'm going to ask today. It's probably like last year. When the New Year's Eve comes, the scales will be opened and the money will be divided." "Oh, great, I've been waiting for a year and finally got the money. I'm going home right away and telling my parents. And me, let's go together." The villagers cheered and ran away in the blink of an eye, leaving the village chief smiling and shaking his head, wandering home for dinner. After dinner, he actually went to the Li family courtyard. As a result, as soon as he entered the door, he met Shui Ling and walked out. Shui Ling shouted in surprise, "Grandpa, village chief, Our Lady asked me to invite you to speak, and you just happened to be here." "Princess, do you have anything to say?" The village chief quickly quickened his pace. Jiyan was looking through the roster of people in the village. When he saw the village chief coming in, he gave up his seat and handed over tea, and then brought a plate of oranges to the old man. The village chief was in a bad temper and asked without eating anything, "Princess, do you need anything from the villagers?" "That's right, Grandpa village chief, I can't hide anything from you." Jiyan smiled and complimented the old man, making him smile, and then she talked about the snack shop. At the end, she added, "I thought, instead of helping others to open a branch, we should make the money ourselves. I would like to ask the village chief to ask the girls and boys over 10 years old in each family if they want to learn how to bake snacks. If there is, he will be sent to Bianjian to be an apprentice for half a year, and then next summer he will go to another state capital to open a branch. Of course, he must have some talent and be able to endure hardships away from home. If you don't want to, it doesn't matter, I will need some people to help prepare the medicine next year. In short, as long as everyone is willing to work hard, there is a way out for everyone. But it is best to choose something you like, so that it is easier to get started. The village chief uncle was happy to hear this and responded repeatedly, okay, okay, this is a great thing. In the village, the girls and boys have all been studying for a long time now, so literacy and accounting are no problem. If they are good at studying, their families will naturally be willing to allow them to take the exam. If a young scholar emerges, it will bring glory to the village. But it's not the material for studying. If you continue to study, it will be a waste of time. It's best to learn some skills and support your family in the future. As he spoke, he stood up directly and said, just wait, I will go to the village to ask, and finally give you an accurate number. Before the words were spoken, the old man went out, and it was too late for Ji-yin to keep him for a cup of hot tea. Ms. Lee came out of the backyard with her sewing basket. When she saw the village chief's back from a distance, she asked her granddaughter, why did the village chief leave just after he came? Ji-yin peeled an orange, brought it to grandma's mouth, gave it a few words, and then she took the car into the city. Because on the longevity festival, the emperor personally endorsed the birthday cake, which made Ji-yin completely popular. There are more than a dozen people who come to order birthday cakes every day. Other customers came into the store out of curiosity even if they didn't order cakes. And it's impossible to go out empty-handed when you come in. There are all kinds of snacks with novel and delicious tastes. Buy a little of this, a handful of that, put it all together, and you won't be able to get out of the store without leaving a tael and a half of silver behind. When the good news came in through the back door, the yard was bustling with activity, and the aroma in the kitchen was fragrant. Everyone bowed to their master when they saw him. Ji-yin waved her hand, indicating that they should continue working, and then talked to Chen 11 and shopkeeper Peng. Shopkeeper Peng was so excited that he announced the good news repeatedly, boss, business has been very good these days. The shop is already working in 2 shifts day and night, but I still can't take care of it. Ji-yin nodded, I saw it just now. You all have worked hard. This month, everyone will receive half of their wages. In addition, I have started to look for recruits. They are all girls and boys from the new village. Please teach them well. Next year, when they have almost learned enough, they will be released to open branches. Open a branch? Shopkeeper Peng and Chen 11's eyes lit up when they heard this. Although they didn't plan to go out, of course they were happy that the shop would become bigger and better. However, when talking about the first branch, Ji-yin still feels as disgusting as swallowing a fly. She said a few words briefly, and finally gave instructions, you don't have to think too much, just think of this branch as a customer who buys a lot of goods. The people in the shop pay close attention to the skills and recipes, and the rest is just a trivial matter. The branch has just been prepared, and it won't open in 7 or 8 days at the earliest. When they come to pick up the goods, I will set the rules. You can just follow the rules in the future. Shopkeeper Peng and Chen 11 both looked bad. They had put a lot of effort into this shop. No one will be happy if someone is eyeing you now. Moreover, the princess's boss behaves generously and has clear rewards and punishments. They feel relieved and convinced to follow such a boss. If it were the third princess, I'm afraid her hard work would be lost and she would have to be beaten and scolded all day long. The two of them looked at each other and made up their minds to take good care of the shop and not let anyone take advantage of it. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 682. Chapter 682 finally made a new discovery. Not to mention the speculations of the Li family, just that in front of a restaurant in Zindu, 2.5 young men were sweeping the steps with brooms. A little boy ran out of the house, stuffed 2 of them with white flour steamed buns, and said with a smile, Dahi, Ziahi, you are hungry, take a quick bite to fill your stomach, Our shopkeeper specially ordered it to be brought to you." The 2.5 young men quickly thanked them, but after taking the steamed buns, they put them into their arms while their men were still busy. The boy was free at the moment, so he put on his sleeves and stood aside chatting with them. The honest-looking Dehi worked hard to shovel some dirty things on the steps and complained softly to the boy. "These rich gentlemen are really in bad shape after drinking just now. Mr. Bao vomited here when he went out. The weather is also cold, so I came over to clean it up, but it was still frozen." "That's right," the young man also curled his lips and said in a low voice, "although they usually look like dogs, in fact, they might be doing something dirty behind their backs." Dehi approached him and asked mysteriously, "Brother Li, I heard Master Bao and the others said they were going to some yaokai. And when they talked about it, they smiled strangely. Where is that place? It's really the Queen Mother's fairyland. Are there any fairies?" The boy was startled and quickly covered Dehi's mouth. He looked around vigilantly and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw no one around. Dehi seemed to be frightened. He shrank next to the boy and asked with a panicked look on his face, "Brother, can't you say this?" Perhaps he was moved by the affectionate brother. The boy hesitated for a moment, then whispered in Dehi's ear, "Don't just call this place called Yaokai casually, the evil spirits in that place are very powerful." Dehi shrank even more and asked, "Brother, don't worry, I didn't tell you, you just heard about it by chance. Do you know this place?" The boy couldn't help showing off and said something almost angrily. "Last time Mr. Bao and the others were leaving after dinner, someone dropped a jade pendant on a chair, and the shopkeeper asked me to chase it. I chased him all the way to the Miwan area where Dongcheng and Baikan meet, and finally returned the jade pendant. I saw the novelty nearby and wanted to take a few more looks, but someone jumped out and strangled me. It was because of the old man who interceded for me that I was let back. Mother, I almost died. That place is definitely not a good place. You must not say more or inquire, or you may not be able to save your life." Dehi quickly nodded vigorously, as scared as a quail. The boy was relieved, and the shopkeeper in the room called someone, so he hurried back. Dehi looked at Ziahe at the foot of the steps and continued to work hard to clear the snow until the front of the restaurant was clean. The shopkeeper walked to the door and took a look. He was very satisfied and nodded with the two of them. The old, weak, sick, and disabled people in the relief department were just like the rats in this new capital. They were annoying. The honest ones beg on the streets, while the bolder ones do dirty things like stealing and robbing, which makes everyone frown when they mention it. Fortunately, Mr. Li asked the emperor to take charge of the relief department. After several months of adjustments, the relief department has undergone major changes. The original beggars and homeless people all carried brooms and went out to sweep the streets, sweeping fallen leaves in autumn and snow in winter. Each household on the street only needs to pay a few tens of pennies a month, and the front door will be clean every day. Occasionally, there are people who help when I take out the dirty stuff. Moreover, the people at these relief agencies never harass the guests, nor do they beg, and they know the rules very well. Over time, everyone has figured out the benefits and become accustomed to such convenience. So, those who paid several tens of pennies were willing to do so. Like their restaurant, they are also willing to give away some of their daily leftovers. The cloth shop across the street is willing to give 1 or 2 bolts of coarse cloth that are eaten by insects or moldy. In short, everyone and the people from the relief department have initially reached a certain tacit understanding, which is mutually beneficial. Dehi and Ziahe politely bowed to the shopkeeper, and then went to clean up the next house. They didn't go back to the relief department compound until it got completely dark and the streets began to be cleaned. The inside and outside of the courtyard were even more clean. There is a faint light from the fire in the stove, and the smell of rice is still there. An oil lamp was lit next to the kitchen room, and there were more than 20 children sitting inside, learning to write from a scholar. The children are not very old, they look to be 7 or 8 years old. The coats and pants they wear do not fit well, but they are patched but very thick, and they are also very clean. They tried their best to put their hands behind their backs and hold their chests out, very seriously. The scholar didn't know what he said, but the children all responded loudly and confidently. Dehi and Zayahi put down their brooms and wanted to walk into the inner courtyard, but were stopped by the old woman coming out of the kitchen. Dehi and Zayahi, hurry up and eat, I've left 2 bowls of porridge for you, and there are also sorghum pancakes today. Dehi and Zayahi quickly waved their hands, and Dehi said, Grandma Wang, let's talk to Manager Zheng for a few words first, and we'll be here soon. The old lady did not insist anymore. Go ahead, Manager Dajhan is here today. Uncle Li has 2 attendants, one named Zheng Feng and the other named Zheng He. On weekdays, when Uncle Li is not at the relief office, he will leave an entourage here. The manager of Dezheng is Zheng Feng. Dehi and Zayahi ran behind and found Zheng Feng, who was also eating. He must have eaten better. There was a bowl of porridge, 2 steamed buns, and a roast chicken on the table. Dehi Zayahi knocked on the door and came in. He was not hungry for roast chicken, but told the news carefully. Zheng Feng frowned when he heard this, but he was happy in his heart. They have been searching for more than half a month and finally found the specific place. Okay, I understand. I will record your merits today. You don't need to check again in the future. Be careful of the danger, Zheng Feng said. At the Princess Mansion, we should keep a close eye on you and report back everything no matter how big or small. Dehi and Zayahi were obviously very close to Zheng Feng. Dehi asked with a smile, Manager Dezheng, do you want us brothers to replace Dehai and Ziohe? They have been staring at the Wang family for a while, and they have gained nothing. Zheng Feng glared at them and said, just mind your own business. Everyone has their own errands. You can't just switch them around. It's easy to miss key details. After saying that, he tore off the 2 legs of the roasted chicken and distributed them to the 2 brothers. He said, go out after eating. If anything happens, report back at any time. Dehi and Zayahi wiped their hands, then took the chicken legs, ate them in a few bites and ran away. They went to the front to eat the porridge and sorghum cakes in the kitchen. As for the steamed buns in their arms, they gave them to their younger brothers and sisters who were studying to cushion their stomachs after class was over. Although they are called Dehi and Zayahi, they are not real brothers, they are just partners on errands together. They all have younger siblings who need to be taken care of. Remembering this time last year, they held their shivering younger brothers and sisters in their arms, endured cold and hunger, suffered day and night, and might die at any time. Now, they have enough food and clothing, and their younger brothers and sisters can still study. What they have to do is just be smarter and be the master's eyes and ears. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 683. Chapter 683, Be on guard against others. Not to mention the relief department, the 2.5 young men investigated important clues. Just talking about the Sujintan Li family, they all fell into sleep at this time. Jiyan entered the space as usual, slept for 3 hours, and then started to work energetically. The end of the year is coming soon, and there are celebrations at home and in the prince's mansion. If you only have relatives and friends like the Lu family and the Wen family, you don't need to worry too much. After all, we are all our own people, so just choose what is practical. But this year there are more Geo family and Xing family. Also, the eldest brother and the 6th brother were selected as scholars. Dean Zhou and Mr. Tang at the college had to prepare gifts, not just annual gifts, but also gifts of thanks. Even the palace has to send 3 copies. Before, She only walked around with the emperor because of her young age. But this Wanchao festival, I met the Queen Mother and the Empress. If they were left behind during the New Year's gift and someone caught them, they could be labeled disrespectful. This is also the reason why she is unwilling to move around the palace often. It's really like pulling out the radish and bringing out the mud. There are more and more things that need to be paid attention to, which is tedious and labor-intensive. Although her adoptive father and second uncle both said that she didn't need to worry, just let her be herself and not wrong herself. But she is not a child after all, and she cannot be willful enough to ignore her. The court is dangerous and she can't help, so she can only avoid causing trouble to them. Fortunately, she was not a very outstanding person in her previous life, but after working for several years, she still knew some basic human ways. Try to be as thorough and careful as possible, and you can still deal with everything in the same way. So, she planned to think of some new and not particularly eye-catching southern fruits to include in New Year gifts. Little Fox Sanjo followed behind, like a loyal steward of space. One moment I was holding an orange for my master, and another I was holding a bunch of grapes. I was very busy. Jiyan ate while walking, and finally settled on 3 types of fruits: oranges, purple grapes, and bananas. Oranges are a popular taste, everyone loves to eat them, and they are easy to store. Grape trellises and banana trees are found in greenhouses. Mrs. Jia and Mrs. Singh have both seen it with their own eyes and will not doubt it. As for the rest of the mangosteens and mangoes, let them be beautiful in their own space. The time is not yet ripe for them to appear at will. With these 3 kinds of fruits, plus the apples picked in the orchard in autumn, we make 4 kinds. Pick some green vegetables grown in the greenhouse, which is definitely the best and most rare gift in winter. You can even add 2 pots of good blooming flowers to add some elegance. In the private plot behind the courtyard, except for a small patch of precious medicinal materials such as ginseng, the rest are grown one after another. Occasionally, a crop of grain will be planted at intervals to give the black soil a change of taste. Fortunately, the land is silent, but it is also the most reliable. Has been nourishing all crops silently, without any protest. In the vegetable garden, all kinds of green vegetables are still the protagonists. After all, they are always consumed at home. Cyclamen also comes back every now and then to transport a cart, and Jia Huan comes back to pick it up in person. This brother is taciturn, but very understanding. They keep accounts every time. Even if they take these vegetables from Cyclamen, cook them and sell them to customers, they can clearly remember the profit. Jiyan knew that he was preparing for his uncle to come back and give her some money, and she wouldn't stop him. There are family members around her who have loved each other all their lives. If her uncle and brother are willing to share their money with her, she will accept it. In the future, she will always find a way to give back to them more. The family is having a better life now. Apart from vegetables and fruits, there is no need for good news to secretly supplement anything else. So, in autumn, she gave away most of the rabbits in the space to the naughty boys in the village. There are only a few female rabbits left who have made great contributions. Even though they are old and can no longer reproduce, the good news has not abandoned them. She plans to care for these female rabbits until they die. After all, it's not that difficult, just throw in a cabbage or radish every day. But the chicken, duck, and goose pen was still lively. There are hundreds of them, big and small. Not only do they eat a lot, but they also bark fiercely. They are an important part of the fireworks in the space courtyard. All the chickens, ducks, and goose eggs obtained by Good News were saved. Most of it is cooked and pickled, and the other half is raw. It is guaranteed to be eaten at any time, and a basket can be taken out at any time, either stir-fried or steamed. The fat pigs in the pig house have been sent to the pig house in the village one after another due to Good News. Once she came, she raised the pig so big that she couldn't kill it. Secondly, if there are more pigs, they will eat more and excrete more. Although she can operate with her mind, the job of being a shoveler is really unspeakable. Finally it's the little lamb. His mother was Ji-yun's wet nurse. She nursed her for half a month when she was just born, and then followed her to Sun's house. I don't know what happened to her. Ji-yun thought about this and had no intention of killing it. In autumn, she even asked Hayama to find a husband for it. Now the lamb's belly is getting bigger, and she will soon become a mother and will produce milk. After the good news, I'll take a goat milk bath, make a snack, and take a calcium supplement, and I'll have hope. The yard in front of the small courtyard has been adjusted several times and is now full of shelves. Zhuang received an order to store grain in the autumn, and he implemented it thoroughly. Later, Yashin sent a message and asked them to steam the white rice they bought back into rice balls, steam the thin noodles into steamed buns and vegetable buns, and bake the sorghum flour into pancakes. Yashin would go to Zhuang every other day to transport all these steamed buns and cakes back and store them in the front yard as a precaution. After fleeing famine twice and even starving at birth, Ji-yun understands the importance of food all too well. Even with this magical space close to her, she still didn't feel very safe. What's more, now my adoptive father and father are leading troops and ready to march north at any time. Tens of thousands of northern expedition troops are tens of thousands of mouths. She always had a vague premonition that one day she would have to fill tens of thousands of mouths. Simply, at this time, she started preparing early. When the spring breeze is triumphant, set up a good situation. Only when you are besieged on all sides will you have a way out. Especially after the incident in Bianjian, she went back on her word with the emperor and had a grudge in her heart. Zhuang is the mother clan of the adoptive father and the emperor, and the people left behind are also loyal to the adoptive father and the emperor. Of course, there is no need to tell the Li family about their adoptive father. But the emperor. She can't completely believe Zhuang. In 2 days, the last batch of dry food will be finished, and she doesn't plan to continue. If you have a chance in the future, please ask your adoptive father carefully before making a decision. As for the people in Zhuang, including Shui Ling Shui Yun, there are now more than a dozen serving the Li family. Everything is done faithfully and steadily, and cannot be replaced casually, and there is no reason to do so. Ji-yun decided to find Dr. Zhang in the future to see if there was any way to completely control these people without leaving any trace. They are loyal and naturally safe. If they betray one day, she will not be without the power to contain them. After touring her kingdom, Ji-yun continued to study hard in her room. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 684. Chapter 684 represents the taste of happiness. The sun rises and the moon sets, and the wind and snow come one after another, as if it's lava in the blink of an eye. Before it got dark, Tao Hongying, Shuiling, Shui Yun, sister-in-law Kaiyang and Dongmei, who came to help, heated up the 2 large pots on the stove. Then, the 8 kinds of grains and beans picked yesterday were washed, filled with water, and boiled. When the sky is bright, the lava porridge in the pot is also stirred to become thick and sweet. This is true for every household in Zincan and Erkin. It was rare for the naughty boys not to be lazy in bed, so they took the initiative to get up, holding the bowl with sleepy eyes, waiting to drink lava porridge. Actually, life is easy now, and a bowl of multi-grain porridge with sugar is not a rare thing. However, no matter what season it is, whatever you eat will have a 3-point bonus of good taste. The cold wind is howling outside and snow particles are flying. The family gathers together to drink a bowl of hot lava porridge. This lava porridge is no longer porridge, it is peace, reunion, and abundance. This is what the whole family drinks to give them peace of mind and stability. Ji-yun drank 2 large bowls of the spicy cabbage, salted cucumber, and red mustard shreds that my mother had pickled by herself. Finally, with her round belly in her hands, she walked around to eat. Li Lao originally wanted to rest at home for a day, but Zheng Feng got up early and came back. After saying a few words, he went into the city. He didn't ask for help. When he heard about the location of Yaokai and the tide protection, he planned to ask Lord Marquis to borrow some men. But the Marquis is in the military camp, and it takes half a day to ride a horse back and forth. I'm afraid the opportunity will be missed. Fortunately, Zheng Lu, Zheng Qi and others followed Jia Ren and the others to Quanzhou in the hands of the people sent by Zheng Jiazhuang. However, Zheng Sanjiang and Jia Huan's young boy Zheng Er are both in the city, so they can help temporarily. So, at 3 o'clock in the morning, Zheng Sanjiang and Zheng Er dressed up as a father and son, carried a load of mountain pears, and set off. In the yard of Li's house, Mrs. Wen and Wenjuan were sewing together and talking to Mrs. Li. Mrs. Wen and Wenjuan were pregnant less than a month apart. Now they are both 5 or 6 months old, and they are already very big. In such weather, they didn't dare to walk around outside. On weekdays, they would just run around between the two courtyards, which was considered active. Mrs. Li took a large bowl of sticky rice and planned to sort it out and make sticky noodles, then steam bean buns and deep-fried fried rice cakes. This is a custom in the north. Even though they moved to Zindu, my family still likes this one. Because life was too poor in the Northland. In the best year of my life, I only steamed 100 bean buns and fried 20 oil cakes. That is the sweetest and happiest taste in the whole family's memory. Nowadays, it's just a matter of words to buy 100 kilograms of sticky rice every day at home. So the old lady planned to make more and send some to relatives and friends so that they could eat freshly. Mrs. Wen and Wenjuan looked amused and greedy. They both threw away their needles and threads and started busy together, chatting and laughing, which was quite lively. Mrs. Li said, "Here, sticky rice is not called sticky rice, but glutinous rice. It is not a valuable thing. But in our hometown, it is twice as expensive as ordinary white rice." That year my second son was working as an accountant in the city, and the master rewarded me with a few kilograms, so I steamed bean buns and fried oil cakes. Jiaxi and Jian are only 4 years old. After eating the oil cake, they licked their fingers one by one. I thought at that time, if life gets better in the future, I will fry hundreds of fried cakes so that the children can eat enough. As a result, a big basin of fried cakes is going to be fried today, and the children have all flown out of the nest again, and they can't come back easily. Mrs. Wen guessed that Mrs. Li missed her grandson, and quickly advised, "This face-saving person, if you can hold it, it's better to freeze 2 balls. During the Chinese New Year, the children can always get together, and it will be fried and eaten right then, so it tastes good." Yes, Grandma Wenwan also said, "Brother Huan is also in the city. He is getting busier and busier. He hasn't been back for 4 or 5 days. Leave some more and eat some fried cakes when he comes back." Old Mrs. Li couldn't help laughing and said angrily, "Don't worry, I can't leave behind your child's father. Jia Huan likes sticky food the most, but he is sensible and refuses to say more." His brothers had eaten the sticky cakes sold in Luoan town so many times before that they didn't even remember it. Fu Niu or never forgot to bring a box to Jiawen every time she came back from town. Wenjuan blushed. As a daughter-in-law, she actually didn't know this. It's no wonder that my husband is always very kind to my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is really much more sensible and attentive than other children. Tao Hongying came in from the outside, casually pulled on a thick cotton cloak, and said while putting it on, "Mom, I'm going to the second village for a walk. The new year is coming soon. I'll see if there are any difficulties in the workshops and households. Go and take Fu Niu with you." Mrs. Li assigned her daughter-in-law a task. "This girl has eaten a lot in the morning, be careful if she puts on more meat, she will be fatter than a New Year's pig." Everyone laughed when they heard this. Jiyan was also smiling and not angry at all. She ran to hug her grandma's neck and played coquettishly for a while, then she also wrapped herself in a cloak and went out with her mother. It is cold in winter, and without the help of the sun and autumn wind, handmade noodles cannot be dried easily, so they can only be dried in a greenhouse. This is definitely a bit more troublesome, but fortunately there are enough manpower, so production is not delayed. And because of the New Year gifts, the sales volume of handmade noodles has also reached a small peak. Little Kuir is busy all day long. She has to take care of the workshop and deal with major and minor affairs in the village during the day. At night, she has to learn arithmetic from Huanayang. She really wished that a person could grow 8 hands and break 1 hour into 3 hours. At this moment, she is sorting out the account books. Although I still don't know much about literacy, I have some difficulty in writing and arithmetic. But she is smart and can use some symbols to replace it, and she actually records it in a decent and orderly manner. Seeing Tao Hongying and Ji Yin approaching, she quickly stepped forward to salute. The Li family has always helped out with this noodle workshop, but they have never participated. For example, Tao Hongying teaches us how to make handmade noodles and boil meat sauce. All the items in the workshop are made under her guidance, and she helps smooth out the assembly line operations little by little. But she didn't say a word about the entire workshop, from the purchase of raw materials such as flour and vegetable oil to the sale, how much the cost and profit were, and how they were distributed. The wounded soldiers, veteran soldiers in the second village, as well as the marquee personal soldiers, there is no doubt that they are all brave and loyal. But many people have families, and money is involved, so the Li family has to avoid suspicion. They were prepared to the end. Despite all their efforts, they were also suspected of lining their own pockets. After the workshop got on the right track, each process in the workshop selected the oldest veteran, a total of 5 people, and established a management team, plus Xiaqui as the shopkeeper and accountant. These 6 people together can manage the workshop in a good way. Most of the people in the second village work in the workshops. If you manage the workshop well, you will also manage the village well. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 685. Chapter 685 Mutation. The only exception is Lao He and others. But the total time they spend in the village throughout the year is less than 2 months. Moreover, they make a lot of money and are generous with their money. When they come back to provide food, accommodation, and washing, the women in the village are vying to help and earn some pocket money. Tao Hongying and Ji Yin followed Xiaqui and looked around, feeling satisfied. Only when we got to the baking room, a small thing happened. The baking room requires high temperature, so of course it is necessary to constantly add firewood to heat the 3 fire walls in the room. The daughter-in-law who was responsible for adding firewood, perhaps coveting the high temperature, actually pulled a rope privately and brought the wet clothes of the children at home to bake. Tao Hongying is obsessed with eating, and what she cares most about is hygiene. She looked at Xiaokuir at that time and asked, "How many times have we said the rules, why can't anyone still remember them? The most taboo thing when making food is uncleanness. How can we dry clothes in a room where noodles are dried?" Little Kuir blushed angrily, glared at the little wife, and said angrily, "What did I say before? You committed the crime twice before, and you cried so much that you begged me and everyone for mercy, and everyone forgave you. Now, only a few days have passed, and you dare to commit the crime for the 3rd time. You really think that everyone will not kick you out, right?" The younger daughter-in-law wiped her tears at that time and defended, "I didn't mean to do it. We of you, the children at home have no clothes, and they can't go out if they can't be dried after washing and drying. I was also anxious. Don't give me this set." Xiaokui wanted to give her 2 slaps. "You have 5 or 6 sets of coats and skirts in winter, but it's not like this if you give up 1 set for a child to replace." Get out of here quickly and wait until everyone has a meeting to discuss whether to fire you, and then we will notify you again. The little daughter-in-law wanted to say something else, but seeing that everyone looked bad and had no room to plead, she ran away crying. Those who don't know better would think that she has been bullied and how many grievances she has endured. Little Kuier sighed and whispered to Tao Hongying, "Fourth Madam, this sister-in-law's man is a personal guard of the Marquis, and I get along well with my 2 cows on weekdays. This sister-in-law doesn't have a good temper, and she doesn't know how to act normally. I've said this many times, but I didn't expect that she just won't change. After I discuss it with the stewards, she will no longer be allowed to work in the workshop." Tao Hongying nodded and told her husband, "Let's make it clear to her husband. It's best not to ruin the relationship between the 2 men. In addition, all processes of making noodles must be strictly monitored and no negligence can be allowed. If someone eats even half a hair in our noodles, the brand of the factory will not be preserved. The brand is ruined, the reputation is ruined, the noodles cannot be sold, and everyone's livelihood is cut off." "Yes, Fourth Madam, I've remembered it. There will be a meeting in the evening." Xiao Kui nodded vigorously. Tao Hongying asked about her salary and dividends before the Chinese New Year, and found that there were no big omissions, so she took her daughter home. On the way, Tao Hongying sighed. When there are more people, the hearts become more complicated. Originally, there were only people in our village who traveled over mountains and ridges. We had a bond of love through life and death, and we were sincere in getting along with each other. Now that there are 2 more villages, there are a lot more things to do, and I still feel that my efforts are not falling behind. Jiyan held my mother's hand and encouraged her with a smile. "Mom, our family's efforts are not to please these people, but to share the worries of our adoptive father and father, and to respect these heroes who sacrificed their lives for the country. So, as long as my adoptive father and dad can worry less, and as long as the veterans have a place to stay, it will be fine. As for those ignorant people, they are indispensable wherever they go. Who doesn't have a few rice worms in their rice vat, right? Don't be angry with them, it's not worth it." Tao Hongying heard what her daughter said made sense, and didn't want her daughter to worry about such trivial matters at such a young age, so she smiled and changed the topic. "Are you going to the city tomorrow? Mom will go with you." "Isn't your eldest brother's classmate's uncle a middle-aged man? He sent a message to Baiwan Garden, saying that there are 2 small shops in very good locations. I plan to go and check them out." "Is it the middle-aged man who helped my second uncle and eldest brother buy a small yard earlier?" Jiyan smiled and said, "I'll go with my mother. I must support my mother's business." "Okay, you have the best fortune. Come and have a look with your mother, she will be sure of it." Tao Hongying moved her daughter to her side to block most of the cold north wind. Beifeng naughtily tried to get behind Tao Hongying, but unfortunately he failed and could only fly away angrily. With dead trees swaying and snow particles scattered all the way, we arrived at the riverside pier. In the Northern Expeditionary Army camp, training did not stop because of the cold weather in winter. Especially the new soldiers who have joined the camp, after so long training, they finally look somewhat tough. Most of the soldiers are competent, whether they are running circles or doing exercises. But there are always exceptions in the world, and there are still dozens of them. It is really impossible to hold up the wall with mud. Among them, there are those who are naturally weak, and there are those who appear to be men, but their true attributes are closer to the character for female. In short, these people were sent to the cook camp. During the day, they help with cooking, and there is no need to patrol at night. The only group training they are required to participate in is morning exercises, just running around the school grounds 7 or 8 times before having breakfast. Today, it is Li Laoxi's turn to be on duty. Li Yong and Zhang Cheng took their breakfast and ran to the main tent to eat and drink. Because yesterday Su Jintan sent a carriage to deliver a lot of vegetables and fruits, as well as sticky bean buns and fried cakes prepared by the family themselves. They had already had a meal last night, and they came here shamelessly this morning. Master Ho didn't chase anyone away either. The three of them left half a plate of sticky bean buns for Li Laozi and ate them while talking. Zhang Cheng sighed, when I was fighting outside, I wanted to come back. Now that I have been back to camp for a few months, I feel like my bones are itching all over my body. I really want to run and fight the barbarians again. Li Yong rolled his eyes at him and cursed with a smile, if you want to go, just go by yourself. I can't do it. The Chinese New Year is coming soon, and I want to go home to be with my wife and children. My son and daughter-in-law haven't seen me for half a month, and I'm afraid they don't know me anymore. Zhang Cheng laughed and shouted, it's okay that your daughter-in-law doesn't know you. It would be a bad thing if you call someone else dad. You, Li Yong turned his elbow and said with emotion, homemade food is delicious. Those boys in the cooking camp, I suspect they are seeking revenge for their own sake. How come good food and good winter vegetables can be made so unpalatable by them? It's like pig food. Zhang Cheng said, fortunately, it didn't taste good. If it tasted good, I would have doubled the monthly military rations. While they were talking, the Marquis took away the last piece of oil cake, causing the two of them to stare. The Marquis ate slowly and said, you have reminded me that when I return to the city tomorrow, I will first go to the Ministry of War to approve the New Year's goods. If those people don't hurry up, they may not be able to deliver them until the New Year. Yes, Zhang Chen nodded quickly, every time Mr. Ho goes there in person, they are as scared as quails. When we go there, they all raise their chins and drink tea, as proud as some uncle. You see. I always want to crack the whip and make them cry for father and mother. Li Yong was about to speak, but the tent door curtain was suddenly raised, and a soldier rushed in. He looked very panicked and shouted, Master Marquis, it's bad, someone died on the school field. The fourth update is here. Little fairies, don't miss it if you pass by. On the last day of the month, vote for Huahua as a must-read. There are also reminders and positive comments, click on good view or 5 stars. I love you all and are a great group. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 686. Chapter 686 Unknown Cause of Death. What? Li Yong jumped up in shock. Remembering that Li Laozi was in the school grounds, he got up and ran out without caring about etiquette. How he took Zhang Cheng with him and followed him. The large school grounds were already in a commotion. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the northwest corner, surrounding the fallen soldiers in the middle, Li Laozi and a few soldiers. The people on the periphery didn't know the situation, so they tried their best to look around with their feet raised, and asked in a low voice, what happened, why are people dead? A soldier who was usually dissatisfied with the strict training said, what can happen? I'm so exhausted. In such a big winter day, I'm not allowed to rest. I'm running around in the wind and snow like a fool every day. It's a wonder for the immortals. Of course, there are people with conscience who retort, shut up. If you don't know the reason, don't talk nonsense. We practice like this every day. Who is exhausted? Who is not getting better and better? This person is probably suffering from some serious illness. Li Laozi had no time to pay attention to these words. He squatted in the middle of the field, with a dark face, repeatedly checking the soldiers' breathing, hoping for some hope of rescue. Unfortunately, the soldiers were thin and thin, the eye sockets were dark, and the corners of their mouths spit white foam. His brows were so furrowed that he almost killed a fly, and he felt confused. Today's morning exercise was the same as in the past, just running circles, and there was no sudden increase. As a result, the soldier fell behind only halfway through the run. He chased after him and wanted to scold him, but before he could speak, the soldier was dead. The incident happened so suddenly that he was too late to save him. At this time, Li Yong, Hoya and others also arrived. Li Yong didn't mind it either. He rushed forward and checked carefully. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw that there were no whip marks on the soldiers. As long as Li Laozi did not take action, no matter what the cause of the soldier's death was, he had nothing to do with him. Obviously, the Marquis thought so too, and immediately ordered his soldiers to find a military doctor. Zhang Cheng wanted to drive the soldiers away, but hesitated and let them watch the fun. Soon, several military doctors arrived carrying boxes. After an inspection, several military doctors were worried. One of the oldest ones said carefully, "Master Marquis, this soldier was not poisoned. He was in poor health and could not bear the burden of training, so he died." Li Laozi said in surprise, "It's impossible. The morning exercises are the same every day, and there's nothing extra today. How can it be that you can't stand it?" Another military doctor thought for a moment and said, "General, it's true. This soldier's energy seems to have been drained. It's like a hollow tree. It looks like an ordinary tree, but when it encounters wind and rain, the trees next to it sway a few times, but this hollow tree breaks directly." Everyone understood it clearly and couldn't help but nod. The soldier's appearance is indeed unhealthy. He really looks like he is terminally ill. Zhang Cheng asked, "I checked him when I entered the camp. He shouldn't be like this. Moreover, he didn't deprive himself of any food in the camp, so he wouldn't be so hungry. What on earth could have drained his energy?" One of the soldiers had the courage and asked, "Is there a vixen in the camp who specializes in sucking human blood?" Everyone else subconsciously shrank their necks and looked around, as if a vixen was really going to rush out and bite them at any time. The Marquis opened his mouth and scolded, "That's nonsense. How can there be any monsters in this important military camp?" After saying that, he ordered, "Wrap up the soldier and check all his belongings to see if there are any clues. Then notify his family to come." "Yes, Lord Marquis." Li Yong and Zhang Cheng responded in unison. Although Mr. Ho didn't say anything, Li Laozi took the initiative to retreat and waited for the result. After a while, the soldier was carried down and placed in a temporary simple coffin nailed with wooden boards. The soldier's luggage and supplies were all delivered to the main tent, and all the generals and lieutenants in the camp gathered together to inspect them. There are not many luggage items, just clothes and bedding, a few pieces of broken silver, some jade pendants and other accessories. If it is strange, there are two things. A very long tobacco stem with a round gourd at the top. One is a jade box the size of a red date. The tobacco stem looks like a dry cigarette smoker, but if you look closely, you can see that it is somewhat different. I don't know what was contained in the jade box. It was scratched very clean and smelled slightly bitter. Everyone asked, but no one could guess what it was. Thereupon, all the people in the tent of the dead soldier were summoned. There was a smart one among them. When the generals asked about the long tobacco rod and the jade box, he started talking about it. "Master Marquis, generals, this dead Chen Hek treasured these two things. We often saw him secretly holding this pipe, digging something out of the jade box and smearing it in, tinkering for a while, and then started smoking happily. It looked like he was about to enter the bridal chamber. We were curious and wanted to take a sip, but he also cursed us, saying that we were poor people and that the things in this jade box were worth 1,000 gold. Yes, at the end of every month, when our family gave us things and we gathered together to eat and drink, he would secretly hold the jade box and giggle." Another soldier also agreed, "But last month, no one seemed to give him a jade box. He always loses his temper, acts like a donkey, and doesn't like anyone." The smart soldier from before nodded even more vigorously and said, "A few times, I saw him going crazy, banging his head against the wall, and rolling on the ground. I wanted to find a military doctor for him, but he even scolded me for being nosy. Son. Everyone frowned, guessing that this matter must be related to this mysterious jade box. But the jade box was empty, so we could only wait for the soldier's family to arrive before making further inquiries. Li Laozi temporarily took off the label of brutal military training that led to death, but the matter of training soldiers was still handed over to Zhang Cheng. As the sun turned to the west, the deceased Chen He's family finally arrived. 2 generations up, the Chen family has also made great achievements in war. It is a family of military generals worthy of the name Tianwu. But perhaps the ancestors were so amazing and talented that they took over all the aura of their children and grandchildren. As of Chen He's father and uncle's generation, their talents were mediocre. They relied on family shadow and loyalty to serve as 4th-rank military attaches in the Kyoto City Defense Army. When it came to Chen He's generation, the Chen family was even less prosperous. Only Chen He and another cousin inherited the family business and incense. The 2 brothers entertained cats and dogs every day, ate, drank, whored and gambled, and competed with gods every day. When recruiting troops, my cousin got away with it because he bought a scholar title on a whim last year. Chen He had no choice but to bite the bullet and enter the military camp. Now that Chen He is dead, half of the roof of the Chen family has collapsed. Chen He's father Chen Chuan and Chen He's eldest uncle and second uncle arrived. Their eyes were red. Almost as soon as they met, the 3 of them grabbed Li Laozi's clothes and looked like they were going to eat someone. Chen Chuan roared angrily. Xiao He often wrote home saying that training was hard, and we also advised him to persist. Unexpectedly, you actually exhausted him to death. You mud-legged person, you know nothing about military training. You are the murderer. I am going to file a complaint. No one can protect you, you have to pay for Xiao He with your life. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 687. Chapter 687. Something is fishy. Everyone in the military camp frowned. Although they understood the Chen family's pain of losing their son, they couldn't stand it when they came up to criticize the family and made excuses for the Li family's background as a farmer. A deputy general stepped forward and separated the Chen family members, loudly advising, "Commander Chen, please express your condolences. It's better to calm down now, the most important thing is to find the cause of Chen He's death." "What's the cause of death?" "He was killed by you." Chen He's father was almost crazy. He asked with red eyes, "You think, is it because my son didn't give you any money, so you treated him harshly?" "This matter, son, we are not done yet, I want to avenge my son." The eldest and second masters of the Chen family also nodded. Mr. Chen said, "Xiao He died in your military camp. Don't try to find an excuse to cover up the fact that he was killed by you." Everyone in the military camp clenched their fists and tried their best to endure the beatings, so they didn't beat these 3 people to pieces. It was Mr. Ho who slapped the table to stop the noise. He glanced at the 3 brothers of the Chen family coldly and said in a cold voice, "Chen He trained and drilled with thousands of soldiers and was never punished corporally. The other thousands of soldiers were safe and sound, only he died suddenly. Even if you file a complaint, you have nothing to do with General Li." Chen Chuan gritted his teeth with hatred, held his neck and shouted, "Master Ho is saying that my son deserves to die, and no one is to blame." The Marquis did not nod, but threw out the jade box and the long cigarette rod, and asked, "Did your family bring this to Chen He? Especially what is in the jade box? If you can explain it clearly, the cause of Chen He's death will naturally come to light." The 3 brothers of the Chen family looked at the long cigarette rod and the jade box, looked at each other, and shook their heads. Chen Chuan's eyes were still full of hatred, and he sneered, "Chen He never smokes dry cigarettes, if it is incense, it is possible. The Marquis just wants to shirk responsibility, so it's best to choose a more reliable reason. Jiang Cheng couldn't help scolding, how presumptuous. The Chen family is so small that it's not worth our prince's troubles. This thing is used by Chen He every day in the military camp, as he and the soldiers in the tent can testify. Furthermore, the camp did not deprive him of food and drink, let alone punish him corporally, but he was in a state of decay. The reason was all because of these two things. Not only do you not cooperate, but you also believe that our Northern Expeditionary Army is deliberately planning to kill a small soldier. It's really ridiculous. You dare to smear the Marquis. Even if your Chen family doesn't file a complaint, our Northern Expedition Army will not give up. The three brothers of the Chen family were shocked and shut up for a moment, but their expressions were clearly unconvinced. The Marquis sneered, Chen He is not only a descendant of your Chen family, but also a member of our Northern Expeditionary Army. I must investigate the cause of his death thoroughly no matter what. Of course, General Li must be cleared, otherwise, which general will be willing to train his troops carefully in the future? It would be better if you, the Chen family, are willing to cooperate. If you are not willing, then just keep your mouth shut and wait for us to find out. All the military exploits and reputations of the Northern Expeditionary Army were forged with blood, sweat, and lives, and no one is allowed to slander them at will. If this prince knows about it and you spread slanderous words everywhere, don't blame me for being ruthless. All the generals quickly gathered around the Marquis and looked coldly at the three brothers of the Chen family. Cold, iron-blooded. The three brothers of the Chen family were frightened by the powerful momentum and lowered their heads subconsciously. Chen Chuan finally softened his tone, bowed his hands and said, Master Ho, calm down, we are not convinced that the Northern Expeditionary Army killed our children, but we also ask Master Ho to understand our pain of losing a son. After I go back, I will ask my old wife. I am busy with official duties on weekdays, so my old wife personally packed Chen He's luggage. The Marquis stopped talking and nodded towards Jiang Cheng. Jiang Cheng turned around and went out, and quickly led someone to carry the simple coffin to the tent. Chen Chuan saw his son looking miserable and lying in the cold coffin. He couldn't bear it anymore and burst into tears. Mr. Chen and Mr. Chen also wiped away tears and patted the coffin, wishing they could die instead of their nephew. Li Yong asked the military doctor to come forward and said those words about dead wood breaking easily. The three Chen brothers didn't know whether they believed it or not, but they didn't make any more fuss. They just urged the servants to carry the coffin onto the carriage. Seeing the Chen family walking away, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Li Yong couldn't help but cursed in a low voice, what nonsense is this? The new year is coming soon, can people still live in peace? The rest of the people also sighed. It stands to reason that it is quite normal to have casualties in the military camp. Just a few days ago, a veteran who was raising horses was accidentally kicked to death by a fierce horse. But this group of prince soldiers are very different from ordinary soldiers. Rather than expecting them to go into battle to kill the barbarians, it is better to say that they are hostages. Force the court and civil and military officials, pay attention to the Northern Expedition Army, and dare not easily make things difficult for the hostages of the Northern Expedition Army. Now the hostage is dead, and his death is unclear. The family members were full of hatred because their son came in standing and left sideways. The Northern Expeditionary Army did not have rough training and treated their diet harshly, which was extremely unjust. If this matter is not handled well, conflicts between the two parties will break out. No matter how he thought about it, Li Laozi felt that today's incident was strange. After the crowd dispersed, he went to find the Marquis privately and said, Master Marquis, something is wrong with this matter. I always feel that someone is plotting behind the scenes. Either it's for the Northern Expedition, or it's for our family. I want to go back, talk to my second brother, and investigate the Chen family. The Marquis naturally thought of it and replied, If we are targeting the Northern Expeditionary Army, it is nothing more than targeting the military power in my hands, using Chen He's death to stir up dissatisfaction and panic among various families, and putting the Northern Expeditionary Army into trouble. If it's against the Li family, then the opponent can almost target those few. My uncle has been keeping an eye on those houses recently. After you go back, cooperate with my uncle to step up the investigation. If you need manpower, let someone come. Now that I'm in the open, it's hard for me to do anything. I can only work hard for you. Li Laozi cupped his hands and saluted. Your Majesty, your words are serious, I will go back now. After saying that, he went to find Li Yong and Zhang Cheng, explained the errands in hand, and took a few soldiers back to Broken Gold Beach. At the same time, in Baiwen Garden, Li Laoer also took a jade box and looked at it carefully. It is a small box with no carvings and looks very ordinary. The box contained some sauce-colored paste, which was thick and oily. He couldn't see anything strange, so he asked Zheng Sanjiang, you said this thing was brought out from Yaokai, and it is very important to the people there. Zheng Sanjiang nodded and replied, the garden was very well defended. I sneaked in, wasted a lot of effort, and finally hid under a wooden bridge. A boy was walking across the bridge carrying several jade boxes. I heard them saying that if one of them was lost, he would be beaten half to death. It happened that the boy slipped and overturned the tray, so I took advantage of it and picked one up. Those two boys actually went into the water in such a cold winter just to retrieve this box. This thing must be really important. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 688. Chapter 688, One person is short of the other. Li Laoer frowned, played with the small box, and asked, how about that place? Since it is called Yaokai, is it because it is convenient for playing in the water? Zheng Sanjiang shook his head, with a hint of contempt in his expression. No, uncle. The reason why it is called Yaokai is because there are many fairies in this place. The interior is decorated like a heavenly palace, with food, drink, and supplies, all extremely luxurious. In fact, it's just a gold smelting cave. He thought for a moment and then added, I walked around secretly and found that many of the guests were young men from various families in Zindu, and some of them had official positions. They were in a building, and they were served by a woman who smoked a long pipe, and when they finished smoking, they looked like they were crazy. Some people were crawling all over the floor, some were crying and laughing, and some were just having sex, as if they were trapped in some illusion. I originally wanted to take a closer look, but the guards inside were changing. In order not to leave any traces, I had to take advantage of this opportunity to come out. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Li Laoer's heart beat wildly when he heard this, and he always felt that some big secret was involved. He took a deep breath and said, this matter, after investigation up to this point, is no longer a trivial matter. Wait until I think about it, and don't tell anyone about it. Yes, Uncle. Zheng Sanjiang saluted and retreated. Li Laoer walked around the room with his hands behind his back. Zindu is not without its gentle towns like brothels. Although the imperial court prohibited officials from entering and leaving such a place, how could it be forbidden if men were lustful? It was nothing to go there once in a while to drink and have fun, and no one was caught by the censor for this. Perhaps the censor will come occasionally. But this Yaokai is obviously different. It is well guarded, expensive, and sells psychedelic things. The guests he faced were almost all juniors from powerful families, even young officials. Is this a place of enjoyment arranged by someone behind the scenes, intending to make friends with the younger generations of each family? But why is it so mysterious, or so secretive? Zheng Sanjiang's ability is quite good, even it is so difficult for him to investigate. At this time, Zheng He came in to deliver new tea and asked, Uncle, are you going back to Sujintan tonight? There is news from home that today is Mr. Wen's birthday, so I want to have some fun at home. Li Lauer came to his senses and said quickly, "Get the car ready and go back now." Zheng He hurriedly went out to make arrangements. Li Lauer gave Lao Cao a few words and got in the car to go home. He just got into trouble, but he forgot that one person can count on shortcomings and two can count on strengths. There is a miraculous Dr. Zhang and a smart little niece at home, so maybe they know what is weird about the ointment in this jade box. In the yard of Li's family in Sujintan, the cooking stove is busy right now. Today is Mr. Wen's birthday. When he got up early and went to the yamen, Mrs. Wen personally cooked longevity noodles for him and added 2 poached eggs. Finally, he put on new clothes and shoes and stockings from head to toe. After lunch, Mrs. Li went for a walk in the Wen family yard. When she heard about this, she naturally wanted to organize something. The Li family has long regarded Mr. Wen as one of their own. Although Mr. Wen is not celebrating his birthday, nor is he looking forward to his birthday like a child, it is still appropriate to cook some good dishes and have the whole family gather together to have some fun. When Li Lauer entered the door, he saw Mr. Wen, the village chief, Uncle Zhao and others, as well as Dr. Zhang and Lu Baiatu sitting in the hall talking. He smiled and said, "Oh, I'm the last to come back. Fortunately, I'm the last to come back. I bought 2 jars of good wine as an apology." As he spoke, Zheng He stepped forward and placed the 2 wine jars on the table. There are no men who are not good at drinking, especially old men. Soon, they unsealed the jar, smelled the rich aroma of wine, and smiled with flowers on their faces. When the sky was completely dark, tables were opened in the main room and the east room of the Li family. Men and women sat separately to celebrate Mr. Wen's birthday together. Mrs. Wen personally served the dishes to Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying to thank them for taking the trouble. "Auntie, Hongying, we should have a banquet at our house and invite you to dinner, but I didn't expect that we would make you spend money and be tired and worry about it." Old Mrs. Li clapped her hand and said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about? We are separated by a wall and are closer than a family. It doesn't matter where we have a banquet. You, raising the child well in your belly is better than anything else, the rest is just trivial matters. Yes, we treat Mr. Wen as a brother. It's just a small matter like setting up a banquet, and it's not worth it. Besides, we have a lot of people in the family, so it's easy to organize the banquet." Tao Hongying took a piece of dried fried sari, carefully removed the bones, then put it into Mrs. Wen's bowl and said, "Eat more fish, and the children you will give birth to will be smart." After saying that, she picked another piece for Wenjuan. Jiyan held the small bowl and waited for a long time but did not receive any care from me. He couldn't help but sigh and pretended to ask himself, "Oh, Fu Niuer, you've really fallen out of favor. Before your junior brother and nephew were born, no one would love you anymore. What should I do? Should I run away from home?" Everyone was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said one after another, "This girl really doesn't suffer at all. That is, not to suffer, but to be jealous. Not even letting go of the baby that hasn't fallen to the ground in the belly." Mrs. Li even hugged her granddaughter's sweetheart and shouted, "Grandma's fat girl, you are my granddaughter's sweetheart, and Grandma loves you the most." Perhaps to show that they had not forgotten this jealous and greedy girl, everyone picked up vegetables and put them into Jiyan's bowl, which soon became full. Jiyan laughed so hard that he couldn't see his teeth. He no longer said sarcastic words, he shook his head happily, and ate happily, like a puppy wagging its tail. At the dinner table in the main room, the old and young men were also very lively because of the good wine. Telling about the big and small things in the village, the strange guests in the hot spring valley, and the plan to plant melons on a large area next year, and of course the big scales to divide the money on the New Year's Day, and laughter from time to time. At this time, Li Laosi came back on horseback, covered with wind and frost. Everyone was surprised, but they didn't ask any questions and told him to sit down and drink to cool off the cold. Tao Hongying also went to the kitchen and asked Shui Yun and Dong Mei to cook more braised noodles to feed the guards. At that moment, the guards finished their meal and went to the backseat room in the front yard of Yes house to rest. The old and young girls also removed their tables and were sewing and gossiping. The village chief and others guessed that Li Laosi suddenly came back because he had something to say. After eating and drinking, they didn't stay too long and left early, feeling quite drunk. Ji Yin found a few sweet potatoes, dragged the charcoal pot, and roasted them while listening to the excitement in the main room. Li Laosi was sitting on a small bench, baking sweet potatoes with his daughter. Li Laoer and Mr. Wen drank the sobering soup. Li Laoer asked, "Fourth brother, something happened at the military camp? Why did you suddenly come back at night?" End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 689. Chapter 689 Poison that corrodes the spine. Li Laosi didn't want to hide anything, so he said, "Second brother, Mr. Wen, something did happen. When I was training with my soldiers this morning, a soldier named Chen He died suddenly. But the training was the same as usual, there was no difference. The Marquis took charge of the investigation and didn't find many clues. It's just that Chen He brought a strange cigarette pole and a jade box. He usually took a fancy to these two things, and no one else could touch them. He was the only one who secretly toyed with them. But recently, his temperament suddenly changed. He was making noises about not being able to leave the camp. He would occasionally hit the wall and roll around on the ground, like a maniac. As a result, he died suddenly while training with the brigade today. Someone came to their family, and they insisted that it was my rough training that killed Chen He. Mr. Ho came out to scare him and promised to investigate to the end. The Chen family took Chen He's body away, but I felt something was wrong no matter how much I thought about it, so I came home to ask if I had been negligent. Second brother, Mr. Wen, please help me think about it." Mr. Wen just frowned, but Li Laoer's eyes were so bright that it was scary. Everyone looked at him strangely, so he calmly took out a jade box from his arms and asked, "Fourth, look at this jade box, does it look familiar?" Li Laosi took a closer look and jumped up. "Oh, second brother, why do you also have this jade box?" Li Laoer glanced at the door and asked Shui Ling to guard it. Li Laoer then said, "Didn't the eldest princess instigate the third princess to rob Fu Niuer snack shop? I always feel that the princess mansion is not willing to come over and over again to plan for a shop, knowing that the Marquis and the Emperor are backing Fu Niuer. Unless the eldest princess's palace is too short of money, it is completely an empty shell of wealth, so I asked people to inquire more. Everyone in the eldest princess's mansion is normal, only the eldest princess's son often goes to one place and spends money like water. That place is called Yaokai, which is heavily guarded and very mysterious. Today I asked Zheng Sanjiang to investigate and found out that the people inside spent money like water and smoked long cigarette sticks that looked like crazy people. The things they used were taken out of this jade box. He also went through a lot of trouble to get one and brought it out to me. I wanted to wait until tomorrow to show it to Dr. Zhang, but I didn't expect the fourth child to come back. What a coincidence." Mr. Wen squinted his eyes. He has been around the court for the longest time, and he comes from a noble family. He is more sensitive to plots and fights than the Li family. He waved his hand to signal the Li brothers to calm down, and then asked a few questions carefully, and his expression became even worse when he heard the answers. He sighed and said, "It seems that the fourth child guessed well. There is indeed someone behind this matter." Li Laoer and Li Laosi didn't react for a while, but Good News said, "The second uncle said that this thing is from Xiajin Cave, and it is mainly bought by young men from aristocratic families and young officials. And the soldiers under my father are all descendants of aristocratic families. Li Laoer and Li Laosi seemed to have been slapped in the face. Their confused minds were suddenly clear, but they were also buzzing with shock. No wonder people died in the military camp. It turned out to be the Li family, the Marquis, and because of the recruitment of troops, their financial path was cut off. People expected to get money out of the pockets of these children of aristocratic families and wealthy young masters, but as a result, all their silver ingots walking around were imprisoned in the military camp with a draft of conscription. If the guess is correct, the next step for the person behind this is to incite various families to cause trouble. Strive to release all the young masters from the military camp, and Yaokai will naturally have a lot of money. I just don't know who the person behind Yaokai is, and his plan is so big. Even, for the sake of money, want to disturb the military camp. Li Laosi was a little anxious. In a moment, I will send someone to report to the Marquis. This matter is not trivial. If the people behind the plot succeed, the recruits disperse, and the Marquis's prestige is ruined, I will also be charged with the murderer. Li Laoer also said, I also asked people to investigate the details of Yaokai. Only by knowing ourselves and our enemies can we deal with it better. Li Laosi got up and looked for paper and pen to write a few words to Mr. Ho. As a result, Ji Yin didn't know when she got the jade box, and even dug out a little paste and looked at it carefully. Li Laoer was startled and quickly grabbed the box for fear of hurting his niece. He said anxiously, You girl, you haven't figured out what this thing is, why do you do it randomly? What if it's poison? Ji Yin looks very bad, his eyes are full of anger. Because the thing in this box is opium. Or more vividly, poppy paste. In her previous life, this thing almost caused the 5,000-year-old civilization to be completely destroyed. It is an existence that is more powerful than strong ships and cannons. It can corrode the backbone of a nation silently. Even before she came to this world, there were countless people who risked their lives and struggled on the borders of their motherland, sleeping in the open air, just to keep this vicious thing out of the border. Speaking of which, she could clearly recognize this thing and benefited from the school's annual publicity and education. At that time, I recited relevant knowledge, and every time I took an exam, the first place would be given a beautiful notebook. For this beautiful book, she has to take first place every time. Unexpectedly, in another world, she would actually see the real thing. Second uncle is right, this is poison. Ji Yin looked at Li Laoer who was wiping her hands and said, This is a slow poison and the most powerful poison in the world. Do you know this thing? Mr. Wen and Mr. Li asked simultaneously. Lao Li wiped the handkerchief harder and harder. Ji Yin hesitated for a moment. She really couldn't explain the source of the news. All I could say was, I've heard of this thing. It should be called hibiscus paste. It's a beautiful flower that withers and produces round gourds as big as walnuts. Use a knife to cut a small hole, and white slurry will flow out. It will turn into a paste like this after it is semi-dry. This kind of ointment can also be regarded as a kind of medicine. A little bit can treat dysentery, relieve pain, and even treat burns after being boiled. But if you roll this paste into strips or balls, put it on the fire to roast until soft, stuff it into a pipe pot, and continue to roast it, a kind of smoke will be produced. Some people who smoke this kind of smoke will feel ecstasy and feel omnipotent. For example, if this person wants to marry a princess, after taking it, he will have hallucinations. He will marry the princess as his consort, and the wedding will be filled with flowers and candles, until the hallucination disappears. This stuff is extremely addictive. If you don't take it for a long time, your whole body will become weak, your limbs will ache, and you will feel as painful as thousands of ants eating your heart. In order to get some hibiscus ointment, this person will kill his parents and sell his wife and children. There is no morality at all. But if you take it for a long time, in just 3 to 5 years, a strong man will become like a withered stick, his bones will be broken, his face will be pale, and he will look like an evil ghost. Not to mention going into battle to kill the enemy, he will not be able to walk. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 690. Chapter 690. The unexpected added insult to injury. Ji Yan paused for a moment, looked at everyone's faces, and then said cruelly, "There was once a country that had stood for thousands of years and was very powerful, but because of this hibiscus paste, the country almost fell. Some people brought hibiscus ointment from overseas and sold it at a low price until the officials and dignitaries of the country, and even the concubines in the harem, became accustomed to taking it. The people showed their ferocious appearance. Raise prices, control officials, interfere in government affairs, and intend to occupy the entire country. Fortunately, there are some wise people in this country who are aware of the horror of this thing and resolutely resist it, so that the country can barely change hands. But because of this, the national power declined, the treasury was empty, and even ceded land to the fans and signed many unequal treaties. Li Lao and others were dumbfounded, their backs were soaked with cold sweat, and they didn't speak for a long time. They wanted to ask where did Ji Yan know so much and in such detail. But they endured it. First of all, although Ji Yan sometimes behaves strangely, he has never lied. Secondly, for such a big matter, involving so many aspects, Ji Yan knows the rules and will not talk nonsense. Mr. Wen took a deep breath and asked, "Fu Niuer, do you think the fan people are behind this?" Ji Yan shook his head, "No, Mr. Wen. I don't know if the hibiscus paste in Yaokai is also related to the fan people, but if we Tianwu didn't have it originally, then it is inseparable from them. If you investigate carefully, you will always have the answer." Mr. Wen nodded and looked at Li Lao and Li Lao Si with a cold expression. "If it is related to the fan people, this matter must be reported to the emperor. Now there are barbarians in the north of the Yangtze River. If the fan people from the southeastern sea also have evil intentions, we will be attacked from both sides that day and must make plans in advance." Li Laozi said, "I'd better go back to the military camp quickly and talk to the Marquis first." Li Lao also said, "We can't check the Yaokai area for the time being. Be careful not to scare the snake, but you will miss something important." After saying that, he rubbed his niece's hair, feeling a little guilty. "Fu Niuer, I'm afraid I have to endure the matter at the snack shop for the time being." "Second uncle, don't worry, I understand I'm not easy to bully. It's not that easy for them to rob my shop. Second uncle, just do your business and don't worry about me. Ji Yan is not a child, so she will not get entangled in such a trivial matter." Soon, Li Laozi summoned his guards and rushed back to the military camp. Mr. Wen and Li Lao sat and studied together. "If you are reporting to the emperor, what is the best way to word it?" In the end, the two of them unanimously decided to blame Li Zhensheng for the news about hibiscus ointment. After all, he followed the fleet to and from Quanzhou the most, and his business there was somewhat fruitful, and he even made a few friends from the fan people. If he said that he learned about this accidentally, it would not arouse suspicion. Li Lao wrote a letter at that time, describing the matter in detail, and then handed it to two veterans and asked them to stay at the dock starting tomorrow. "Be sure to deliver the letter to your eldest brother as soon as your fleet arrives. It is the 10th day of the 12th lunar month, and there are still 20 days left for the Chinese New Year. Li Zhensheng will definitely come back with the boys to reunite during this period." The second day happened to be the great court meeting held once every 5 days. In Zindu, all officials of the 5th rank and above gathered in the Qinqin Hall to discuss matters. Before the emperor could sit back and relax, the censor began to report, impeaching the Northern Expeditionary Army Li Qiu's hung for rough training and deliberately causing the tragic death of the soldiers. It was a heinous crime. The censor's impassioned speech was filled with righteous indignation. Everyone subconsciously looked at Xintinghao standing in front. Normally, the Marquis does not often come to court, so it is rare for him to stand in the queue today. Needless to say, the Marquis was well prepared for this matter. Sure enough, as soon as the censor finished spitting, the Marquis came out of the queue and presented a pile of confessions with a calm face. There were soldiers in Chen He's tent, the captain of Chen He's team, and all the generals in the military camp. Everyone has proven one thing. The amount of training that day was the same as usual. Chen He was an ordinary member of the group and was not targeted or punished. Therefore, there was no such thing as rough training. Of course, the Marquis didn't mention a word about the strange long cigarette rod and jade box. In the court, fights are always inevitable. But since Xintinghao led the Northern Expeditionary Army, protected the Jinsha River defense line, and drove the barbarians hundreds of miles away, it was possible to regain half of the country. All officials subconsciously reached a tacit agreement that any fight must bypass Xintinghao. Conspiracy to kill Xintinghao, or let Xintinghao devote his attention to court battles. If he has no energy to lead troops to fight, then he is digging his own grave. So, at this time, even though they were dissatisfied with the conscription in their hearts, they were eager to liberate their children at home, but they still hesitated. Moreover, Marquis Xinting came forward and used the entire Northern Expeditionary Army as a guarantee for Li Qiuzheng, and everyone found it credible. After all, no matter how high the Marquis's prestige is, he cannot let everyone in the Northern Expedition Army lie together for a sinner. But the Chen family was unwilling to accept it. Chen He was not killed by Li Qiuzheng, how could he be killed by one of their own family members? Last night I brought the coffin home and the whole family cried half to death. They sat down and talked about it in detail. Everyone felt that the Northern Expeditionary Army forged the cigarette rod and jade box in order to get away with it. Because, the Chen family never gave Chen He these things. When Chen He joined the army, although he lost some weight, he looked very healthy. In just 3 months, he was as skinny as a skeleton and died miserably when he returned home. No one can bear this. Chen Chuan knelt down in the main hall and cried hoarsely. Your Majesty, my son died tragically, and the cause is unknown. I ask your Majesty to make a decision and investigate this matter thoroughly. The Northern Expedition is led by Marquis Xinting. Everyone knows that Marquis Xinting has a close relationship with the Li family. In order to protect Li Qiuzheng, Marquis Xinting ordered all the generals and soldiers to write these testimonies. It is not impossible. The emperor frowned, and just as he was about to speak, Wang Zekin stood up, saluted and said, Your Majesty, what Mr. Chen said makes sense. Li Qiuzheng is the general of the Northern Expedition Army. Even if the Northern Expedition Army investigates this matter, it will be difficult to convince the public even if it does not protect him. It is better to put Li Qiuzheng and related personnel in jail and entrust them to Dali Temple for investigation and interrogation to find out the true cause of Chen He's death. Of course, if Li Qiuzheng is really innocent, Dali Temple will definitely clear his name. Everyone looked strange when they heard this, but they were not surprised. The feud between the Wang family and the Li family is well known to almost everyone. Even now, the third master of the Wang family occasionally runs madly through the streets twice to make the people of Xindu laugh after dinner. Now that something happened to Li Qiuzheng, how could the Wang family not add insult to injury? Furthermore, Wang Zekin works at Dali Temple. As long as Li Qiuzheng enters Dali Temple, he will be a sheep in a tiger's mouth. Even if he is beaten and beaten, the crime will be pinned on him. The youngest son whom the minister of Dali Temple loves most is in the military camp. So, even though he knew that this case was a hot potato, he remained silent and did not stop Wang Zekin. The Wang family is willing to come forward, and whether it succeeds or fails, he has nothing to lose. End of this chapter.